Okay, people. So today I am joined by Nuri Moseinco and Heather L McQuaid. I hope I got those names right. We're talking about their new film, A Positive Contribution. Guys, thank you for joining us.
Great to be
Thanks
here.
for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, so your new short film will be playing at Sci-Fi London, right? You're gonna be at the showcase on the 14th at the Rich Mitch, and then people can view it online until the 22nd of September, which is awesome. Like, yeah, how do you feel about getting in Sci-Fi London? Is it your first time at the festival?
It is, yeah. We're very excited. It's we really I mean any festival we get into is always really nice, and especially then when it's one very local to us. Rich Mixes is a cinema I go to regularly, so it's really cool to be there and yeah, showing alongside some other short films, some that we've seen before as well that we know are really good. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Ah. Yeah, that does seem to be the thing with films in the festival circuit. They all seem to know each other and support each other, which is cool.
Yeah, it's fun. You sometimes see the same filmmakers and the same films at festivals, but it's always nice to see like familiar faces and names and recognize that short film. And there's always still plenty of new films that you haven't seen before. So
Mm,
it's I think I speak for both of us when I say that we like watching short films to get inspired and see what other people are doing and stuff like that. So yeah, always a pleasure.
And I think I mean, I really like sci-fi. And when Nuri and I, when we finished the film, we're like, is this sci-fi? Because it's not like, I guess it's a soft sci-fi, right? It's not like, it's more about
Hmm.
the technology and the society than spaceships and aliens and other things are sometimes um, considered sci-fi. So, but yeah, so I was really excited that the Sci-Fi Festival saw it as sci-fi. So.
no, I mean, I think it's sci-fi, right? But I just think, there's certain things that get categories. You know what I mean? And other things like sci-fi and horror that don't get categories. So, you know what I mean? You have to gauge, oh, like, is this like jump out your seat horror? Is this subtle horror? Or is this, starship sci-fi? Or is this like more lo-fi sci-fi? Right?
Mm.
And I think that's the big thing with sci-fi. There's so much scope within just those two words. Yeah, I mean, there's so much you can do with it. But whenever you're talking about the future, new technology, yeah, I think that represents sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I think it's always about looking at how technology, how some part of technology can be used in the future, or hypothetically, and how that would change the world. And in our case, it's a dystopian sort of futuristic world where this small piece of technology is used, and even though the rest of the world is relatively similar to ours, and that's partly like just because that's inherent to the world that we and mostly Heather created, but also um there's also practical reasons for it, with a small budget that we have,
Yeah.
and with making a short film, you have to choose those sort of specific elements that make this sci-fi world sci-fi, whereas the rest of the world can stay the same. That's not to say that we've seen some very really good short films as well that are sci-fi that are very much more like hard sci-fi, like you were
Mm.
mentioning, like spaceships and stuff like that. So it's always interesting to compare those, and yeah, they both qualify as sci-fi. There's no like one way to do sci-fi, I suppose.
Yeah. I think the thing with a lo-fi sci-fi is that if people don't know what it is, right, and you're expecting spaceships, people might feel a little bit like, huh,
Mm.
wait, what was like, do you ever run into that issue?
Not that I remember. No, I don't think so.
Because
I think
I think most of the festivals we've been selected so far aren't genre specific. right?
Right.
That's why it's kind of exciting. This is very genre specific. So yeah, it's quite different.
And I think audiences are also quite attuned and quite intelligent in that sense, and they know what sci-fi is, and they don't necessarily have one idea of sci-fi. I mean, even looking at sort of the shows and films that were sort of an inspiration for us, what comes to mind is Severance, for example, which I love, which again is not like super strong sci-fi, you know, there's no like flying cars or anything, but again, it uses sort of like one specific piece of technology that sort of changes this whole world. And so I think people, you know, I don't think would be disappointed by the sort of lack of sci-fi-ness in our sci-fi. But I like how you put it, lo-fi sci-fi. That's a cool term.
So, what was it about this story that made you both want to, bring it to the screen?
Heather, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, it was a short story that I read by a friend of mine, a writer, and the first thought was it's a really cool premise. And I've studied psychology, and I could see like this what goes on in this story is not far off from some of the neurological neuropsychology that's happening in the world today. So I thought, what could happen, like, and what is the right decision, right? Because on the one hand, erasing traumatic memories is really interesting technology that could improve people's lives, but you could take it too far. So I guess it was trying to exploring that part of the story of this could happen, and it's a really compelling story. One room, three actors that that could make a good short.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think same for me. I initially was looking for a short film script that, again, for practical reasons, was just one location with a few actors. And so in that sense, Heather's script kind of like fit that. But, you know, most of all, it was just like building this very interesting like sci-fi world from nothing. And, you know, even though it takes place in just one room, I think you do get a real sense of what the rest of the world and, you know, the sort of the government and the institutions and all of that is like. And yeah, and I think in a way, when you don't sort of, when you strip everything back, it allows you to focus more on the characters and psychology. So I very much like find the psychology of it all really interesting. I mean, that's, you know, an element of filmmaking that I really like, and especially with something like this where it deals with memory and identity, that's even more so. So it just allowed us to kind of focus on these really, really great characters in you know, such a short space of time.
So, when adapting the book, do you how do you get to use that story? Do you have to buy the rights, or how did
Yes,
you approach that?
required a lot of research because it's not something we've done before. And honestly, she's a friend of mine. She would have just given it to us, but we wanted to make sure that we had all the paperwork in place.
Mm,
Right? So, yeah, it was basically an option agreement that we optioned to use her script for very specific purposes of making a
yeah.
short film. It was a contract. She signed it. And yeah, we paid her a minimal amount just to have a financial transaction. So
Right. Okay. Yeah, I do think this notion is an interesting one, because there's we know traumatic experiences can have a detrimental effect on people, but then we also know that they can be the fire that drive people to do great things. And we also know that people that have not had any sort of traumatic experience, have come from a loving and wonderful background, have done horrific things. So it's like, does deleting memories really change someone's ability to do bad things? That's where it's like interesting. And then we meet Don, who seems very maniacal. You know what I mean? And you just think, I think Don could do some bad things. You know what I mean? Because Don doesn't seem to, pull back from restraining people. kind of relishes that aspect of the work. So there is that interesting kind of situation going on. Was that in an intentional addition into the story?
You go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna think it was mostly your idea, but in the short story, I don't think the guard played that big of a role. So I think, but because the way we structured it, we wanted to make sure that it was clear at the halfway point that something different was happening. That's when she sends Dawn away. But we also wanted, because Dawn is an excellent device to, as you just say, convey like what else is happening in this world, right? Because Charlotte has some issues. We don't know exactly what they are. And Dawn seems to be lacking empathy. So it's a really interesting kind of dynamic there.
Yeah. I think in a way, Dawn and Charlotte, to a certain extent as well, represent the sort of institution, the institute that we can't, and the government and all the sort of structures. But Dawn is just like kind of a cog in the whole system, and who I kind of see more as a sort of a guard dog, or that you can just say attack and he'll do that. And I guess how much autonomy or how much of his own thoughts and ideas he actually has is to be seen. And there are sort of, we did have discussed like whether the process was actually done on him as well, and maybe everybody in a way, just to get them in line almost, and just sort of serve the higher purpose almost.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does make you kind of think, I'm never accepting a drink from anyone.
Not in that world, no.
You know what I mean? I'm very, you know what I mean, cautious of where you get refreshments from.
Yeah, don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Was I think that was a very interesting approach as well, because the device that you use to convey the treatment, from what we see on the desk, it's not what we expect. Like, was that an intentional red herring?
Yeah. I can't remember how much. I honestly very much don't remember what we would have like written together, or like what was in the short film before.
Yeah,
So it's
that
good.
was in the short story. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was part of this, the red herring of that you're thinking it's one thing, and then it's another. So yeah, that was, I mean, that's part of the mechanics of the short story that I also think work really well, because there's this mystery of what's going on, and then they're also sort of distracted by these other things, which turn out.
And you can imagine that, like, to a certain extent, maybe it's a tool that Charlotte uses, to kind of convince people, because she makes them think that it's the syringe that has whatever, whereas actually it's just the water. So it's maybe easier to convince people to drink the water than to like have to use violence and pin them down, because the syringe does look quite threatening. And so, I mean, it was also just fun to have that syringe as a prop, because it's like, it's kind of like one of the most important props, and it looks really cool, and we got it from a pretty cool place. So it's fun to have that visually, and it looks good on posters and photos and stuff like that as well. So
now, with things like that, with the syringe and other aspects, right? When you were thinking of the aesthetics of this film, right? How did you settle upon, like, say, the syringe over, as I say, something that was more futuristic and out there?
mm. Various reasons, I suppose. One is because of, again, the sort of practical reasons that as soon as you start making things too sci-fi, as in like not too sci-fi but more futuristic, the whole world needs to change. Like it means that you suddenly need like touch screens or holograms or whatever. And kind of we wanted to keep it for practical reasons, but also in a way like it's somewhat timeless. The room, it could be sort of any decade in the last, it could be in the future, it could also be in the past, really. in a way, maybe just to kind of say that this is a story that could be set anytime, in the future, but also could have happened in the past. And it's not, if the technology existed, there are governments that would have used it, if that makes sense. But a big part of it was also just down to our incredible production designer, Alex, who just brought in all the room that we had was just a sort of blank canvas, and he just brought in all the stuff, and it was mostly his recommendation to use it like mid-century furniture that just looks really nice. The sort of brown tones with the contrasting very nicely standing out from the white walls, and then also like the blue blouse that Charlotte has. It just all looked really good. So we're without him, we couldn't not have made this, and he made it look so incredible. And then we get comments like that quite often, that like it looks really good. And so we're very happy that he was able to come on board and help us with that.
Yeah, I haven't watched the TV series, but it did kind of throw off Handmaid's Tale vibes. From reading the book. I kind of got those vibes. But there's a few things like, some episodes of Black Mirror, and there was a film back in the 90s. I forget who was in it now, but it was Equilibrium. And it was a world where I think emotions were banned. And one guy starts to get emotions again. The film didn't quite make sense because the guy who was going against him, it seemed that he was envious, which is an emotion. So if in the world you're not meant to have emotions, then it was this whole thing about emotions and that kind of thing, which kind of jumped to mind as well with this one.
I don't think either of us have heard of Equilibrium, but we'll check it out. You definitely hit the nail on the head with the other sort of references. Yeah.
Yeah, and Minority Report is another one.
Yeah.
And Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with like a different
I mean, that's just classic.
Yeah, not a bad list of references. Not the worst to have to like look through those to get inspiration and stuff like that.
Now, when you were adapting the story, right, was there anything that you had to leave out? Like, how was it kind of dissecting it and applying it for the screen?
Yeah. Well, I think we kept the core of the story, the premise. There were basically three characters in the short story as well. We changed the gender of so it was a husband, so we have a wife instead. So Lucy was originally a husband, and they have like a daughter as well. But we changed the stakes. So I think the short story, the stakes were more subtle, and with the short film, we had to make the stakes really high to kind of hit that within a 12-minute thing. And the ending was also different, and like her and I must have like worked on that, like I don't know, we must have had 5 different endings, I think, over the course of several months. Like, should we do this, could it be that? And it was sort of like, so the ending is different than what it was in the short story as well, again, to have that emotional impact and raise the stakes. But maybe more about that.
No, you're right. I mean, it was like very much like what do you want to leave the audiences with in a way, and we wanted definitely it to have an impact, but also to think like, how do we want audiences to feel? And so we weren't sure, like, do we want it to be kind of like a pessimistic ending or have a little bit of hope? And so I guess in a way we just went with neither and kind of like left it open-ended. So I don't know if that's like kind of cheating, but we had filmed a sort of different ending. And then in the edit, I sort of realized that the ending that we have currently is just so much like the impact lies there. And then the ending, adding the sort of extra little bit at the end kind of left out, then you kind of like end on a like little bit of a deflated note. So we kind of decided to scrap that last scene. It was just a few seconds, so it wasn't like too much. And we have that sort of, we did it, I guess, more elegantly or efficiently by just having the sound over the sort of post title, like the title card at the end in a way.
Right, right. Well, I think the thing with it is because we see it's being filmed,
Mm,
right? So for her to do anything kind of drastic crazy, you'd have to, because you'd imagine she probably knows it's being filmed. So it's just like you'd have to then have like hunting for the video and changing the video, and like there'd have to be that for it to make any you know what I mean?
mm, yeah,
So I thought the ending was good because it makes, like, I'm imagining people leaving the screening and going, would you take that deal? I don't know. I might take that deal. I wouldn't want to go to jail, so I probably would take that deal. Like, what are memories anyway? Do you think memories can, like, those kind of discussions, right? I think
mm,
that's the thing that people leave the screening probably talking about, like those kind of yeah, big picture questions of like, what would you do in a similar situation? Like, is this ethical? Kind of thing, which I think is always an interesting thing for a feature to do.
yeah. I think in a way that was the biggest struggle with the writing and the film in general is like making it convincing that Charlotte changes from sort of believing one thing to something totally different and actually believing it so much that she, you know, like her whole worldview is kind of like flipped on its head within those like just 10 minutes. And so to make that believable is tough. And then also, yeah, to like make it convincing enough that she would actually then take that risk and like supposedly go and find her daughter that she didn't really know about 10 minutes ago. But you can imagine that maybe the technology that they use to sort of brainwash people isn't necessarily perfect, and there's always like remnants or sort of a undercurrent, and so maybe they're, you know, in a way that maybe sort of explains it, that it's not like she's totally, it's just like that. um I want to say Eve, the name of
Lucy.
Lucy. Too
Yeah, it
long.
was Eve Carson that
Yeah,
plays
Eve
it.
Carson. At
Yeah,
least Charlotte has the same name,
yeah.
coincidentally, as the actor, the character, but with the Eve and Lucy, it's a bit more. Anyway, but yeah, so you can imagine that maybe just Lucy had like chipped away at that sort of like top layer, but and was able to kind of get to the deeper sort of psyche of Charlotte.
And we
Mm.
know things like smells and sounds and stuff can react, you can, you know, activate our emotional sensors, which are linked to our memory. So that's why we also inserted a few things at the beginning. She's smelling a pine cone. And then later we see the photo with her and Lucy and their daughter with holding the pine cones. And so we're trying to make these little links that make it more believable that those memories haven't been totally erased. You know, maybe there's some segments missing, and now she's kind of reconnecting them.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I guess like with something like that, I guess it's kind of like how long does it take this thing to fully embed, right? Because there's a lot of things that happen where, yeah, you could like be fully indoctrinated into a short period of time, and other things it could take a bit longer. You know what I mean? Or, maybe the conversation starts the unraveling, right? And then you think in a few days, maybe she's ruminating on it. And then it's like, well, let me just check. I don't know if I fully believe her. If I just go, right, that will just shut it down because obviously nothing will be there and it will show she's a liar and this is all the truth. You know what I mean? Like you think maybe those things might be going through the head, and you know what I mean?
Mm,
So because it is a tricky one to pull off in under 12 minutes. Like
yeah.
why 12 minutes? Like what was the reasoning for the time, by the way?
I suppose if we hadn't edited out the last scene, it would have been close to 13 minutes. But I think the short or the script initially was a bit shorter, and then as we sort of Heather and I were working on it a little bit, sort of workshopping it, it kind of added some, yeah, we added a little bit to it. But I think we probably would have, even if it had gotten longer, we probably would have tried to limit it to 15 minutes. Just again, practical reasons. You know, a few more pages means another shooting day, means, you know, more complexity, more cost, and whatever. But also, I think in terms of festival films, I think 12 is a pretty decent sort of sweet spot for festivals. So even shorter if possible, really. So I think it just kind of naturally got to 12 minutes, I think.
Right. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, IMBD shows that this is your first written piece, Heather. Is that correct?
The first one that's been made. Yeah. Yeah, I've written other things that haven't been made, but this is my first, developed,
Right.
produced, film. Yeah.
Okay. So what was the thing that kind of led you down this path, that kind of got you thinking, yeah, I could write, movies?
I started writing short stories during lockdown just to try to keep my sanity. So that's the first time I tried creative writing. And I got feedback that a lot of my stories were quite visual. And I thought, that's interesting. Maybe I could write a screenplay because I love TV, movies,
Mm.
short films. And I just thought, well, why don't I try it? So yeah, I started doing screenwriting. I was probably doing that for a year or two before I met Nuri. And then I was on Shooting People and I thought, this is all fine writing, but I actually want to make something. So, and some people don't, right? But that was just, I wanted to have
Mm.
that experience. So I saw some directors basically looking for contained short film scripts, less than 15 pages. So, and I saw Nuri on there and I saw some of his work, what he's done before. And I thought, yeah, that looks really good. It looks like we have a similar kind of philosophy or aesthetic or something. So yeah, that's how we met.
Mm.
Okay. And what were the kind of things that inspired you? Kind of, what were the type of things you enjoyed story wise that kind of helped lead you in this direction?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I a lot of my short stories deal with character psychology, right? It's my background as well. So I love
Mm.
exploring the what ifs of what might happen. So I guess I have a lot of lo-fi sci-fi in my back catalog, and I like exploring characters or situations that you don't see on screen that often, or even written about. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to also kind of explore those areas. I like pushing the boundaries. I like poking the bear. So so we'll see what happens.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, Nuri, what was it about the script that kind of grabbed you? Other than the fact that you were looking for something that was just set in one location and all of that kind of jazz.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say Heather is a great writer, and I've read some of her other stuff as well, and it's all brilliant. And so, definitely, I think when you read a script, you know, you can relatively quickly tell like um, how good it is just by the way it's written in a way. And so I was just immediately like, I thought it was written really well, but also, yeah, it's just the story in general. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the sort of the really interesting character psychology and you know, and so I think straight away, pretty much when I read it, I was like, yeah, this is really interesting, and I'd love to meet Heather. And then we kind of met up once for a coffee, and then very in hindsight very quickly decided like, yeah, let's do this, and we are like, cool. And then, you know, and like 6 months later we had made a short film. It kind of all went relatively quickly, but it was nice to kind of we yeah, like, you know, like you said earlier, we kind of clicked and kind of found you know, we were on the same wavelength. And so we've always, the collaboration has been always like really smooth. And it was nice to have somebody that because in a way, like, I got into filmmaking because I love the kind of collaborative aspect and being on set and working with hundreds of people. But actually directing can be, and also writing can be, a very lonely process. And so sometimes you're having to fight for your, you know, for your things to be made and stuff like that. So actually it was really nice to kind of almost share that burden with somebody, and always have somebody to talk to and discuss and yeah, divide and sort of yeah, tackle things together. So that's been really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we're equally committed, right? Because we're also self-funded it ourselves, so it's not just yeah, it's the money, but it's also like our passion and commitment to like make this thing happen. And Nuri's also a writer, so it was really good, you know, having someone who kind of understands that to collaborate with. And he also knows he's made short films before, and he's got, you know, a good network. So it was really helpful to have someone who has sort of like done it before, so that we could we could collaborate on that.
Awesome. Now, with this, and because you know it's set in this world, right? How much was written that we don't see? Like, did you write a Bible for the universe, a backstory for Charlotte and Lucy, and all of the other characters?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a Bible, it was more just like a sketch. Like what do we think happened immediately before this, and how many years in between when various things happened, just so we had it clear in our mind what the characters' motivations were and how long time had taken between when Lucy last saw Charlotte, for example.
Mm,
So that we could make decisions within the story about that would have that reality to it. But we didn't like write pages and pages and pages. It was more just conversations over time where we built up what we thought their backstory was.
And I think we also, even just the sort of the technology, even though you don't see the process, or like, you know, it's not fully explained, we kind of like try to understand how it would work, this technology. And yeah, again, like what happens before, what happens after, what was their life like, sort of a small, I think we did a small biography as well, which also helps the actors as well, if these characters are fully fleshed out. So and I know from Heather always is quite like thorough in her work, and so she definitely has, you know, I think we even did like sort of had one of those that personality diagrams and stuff like
Yes.
that. So you know, any little bit of information can help uh anybody from, you know, like writer and director to actors to the rest of the crew to just kind of fully understand who these characters are.
mm. Yeah. What was the casting process like for this?
It was great. I like the casting process. It's exciting, it's fun, it's you know, seeing the kind of characters come to life. And yeah, it's tough though. We just did a casting call online through, I think it was Mandy, and got I think 400 responses for the three roles. So we were very lucky that we kind of got like yeah, you know, so many great actors applying. So it was a really tough process. So I think initially we just did um casting tapes, and then we whittled it down and did sort of like a Zoom interviews with 20 per role or something like that. And then in the end, I mean, um in a way it was a tough decision, but also like now it almost feels like it makes so much sense. And all the we're so happy with all three of the characters that we actors that we got to play these characters, because they all like just embody it now. So you can't imagine it with anybody else almost. So yeah, it was a fun process. And in a way it was like you kind of get nervous because you want to, I don't know, just present yourself well, but you have to remember that these actors are putting themselves out there, and they're probably like way more nervous than you are. So yeah, it's I admire actors very much, and the work they put in. So it was, yeah, it was a fun process, I think.
Right. And did you give them anything specific to help them, you know, get into the character other than, you know, the bios and that kind of thing?
Not really. I think we gave them some sides and probably a small synopsis of the film, and then a small character biography, but not much more than that. I think what we did do is uh during the auditions I would give a direction and see how well they would like take a direction, or how much they could play something differently. If I, you know, if you felt there was something, another angle that I could find from them. And you know, and some actors they just you know, especially think of like Rory, or who plays Don, he just has something like there's something about him, and so you know, he just has this aura that kind of like for us felt like he was Don, you know. And so and then on top of that he was also a great actor, so that, you know, but sometimes you have an idea, and so these characters, these actors fit that fit that idea of what you have in a way. So yeah.
And we had a rehearsal day as well, which I think was really helpful for the two main characters, right? Because it's such a highly emotional and fraught relationship between them that we did make the decision to spend the extra money. It was worth it. I think rehearsal is really important for these types of roles. And and Nuri had some ideas for also helping them get into it by what did you have them do? It was more kind of free form.
Yeah, it's yeah, we just did rehearsals. I very much in the school of thought of Judith Weston, who's a sort of whose book Directing Actors, or the Director's Intuition, is they're two of the most sort of seminal books on directing actors. And so I just her sort of information was super helpful and informative, because as a director I felt a little bit, it's these actors, they've done hundreds of roles and they've done hundreds of days of rehearsal and acting, and then here I am and I've done a few things here and there, but like sometimes it makes you think, who am I as a director to tell actors what to do, but so my role is just like, they knew what they had to do, but I just have to come in and try to like find the best sort of version of them almost. So yeah, the rehearsal was really great because they kind of yeah, we found some sort of improv exercises and stuff like that. And so especially during the very emotional scenes, during the shoot, you obviously don't have that much time, but actually they were able to use some of the sort of tools that we kind of built or practiced or rehearsed during the rehearsal, and they were able to use that so that they were able to kind of like find that space again relatively quickly, and it's sort of that deep emotional space in time for like ready for the camera, basically.
Right. Okay. It's always interesting hearing people's different approaches to these things, with this, is there any thought of continuing the story or other stories set within this universe?
Yes. So I think what's great about going to festivals is seeing all the other great films and meeting the filmmakers, but also having people respond to your film and like come up to you afterwards and say, that was great, or it really moved me, or when's the next episode? So we heard a lot of like, we didn't create this as a proof of concept, but I think the feedback that we've got because of the world that we hinted at and sort of created, people were really interested in it. So we're currently writing a TV pilot called Model Citizens that's based on this world.
Right. So featuring these characters or...
And more. Yeah, these characters and a few more, because yeah, it's we actually have to create more of the world. That was just one room, right? Now we need to see what's happening. What happens outside that room, right? Oh my God.
Yeah, it's daunting, but also in a way fun that you have more space to work with and you can add more characters and more layers and more depth, because yeah, like the short film is just like a sort of just one window into this bigger world, and so we can take it outside of the room and yeah, develop it further in a way. So yeah, it's fun.
With that though, I guess it's like, do you start before the short or after the short? Yeah, I mean, what's the genesis of it all? Like, is it when the dictum comes through that this new technology will be used, or is it the tech has been in use for so many years when we step into the world? Like, have you decided?
Yeah, I mean, we have an outline.
Right.
Change, right? But yeah, I mean, I think what the scene that you see in the short is not going to be necessarily replicated in the pilot, but those relationships and that kind of technology will be. So it's kind of, currently the pilot starts a little bit before what you will have seen in the short, sort of, right? So that we see Charlotte has just had the procedure done and she doesn't realize that her memories have been wiped, and she's a good soldier, doing these procedures on large part of the population. So they're like now the government is sort of funding this, and we see sort of the larger picture and the political aspirations and how all of these fit in and how people are trying to use this technology for their own gains.
Yeah. Ooh. This sounds like it could get exciting. Okay.
So. Yeah.
Have you thought of episode counts, episode lengths, all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's probably 8 episodes. And it's a drama, so we're around 50-60 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah. All right. Gonna start polishing up my my acting. Maybe I'll spend the tape in.
Yeah. Would you like to be a guard?
Oh, I think I could play a guard. Oh man, like, why did you think TV series over film?
Why did we, Heather? I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, we went back and forth, to be honest. I think we originally started with a feature, and it just felt like this world and the different stories you could tell, it just requires more time to get into it and understand like what's happening, and for people, like for the theme to come across of like people to think like, well, it's not black or white, it's a gray area, right? Like it's how you use this technology and the safeguards you put in place. And so it's trying to tell that story from different characters' points of view and actually see why this technology even exists in the first place. Like what happened to the world that this is now sort of necessary. I think you could do it in a feature, but we just felt like there's so many stories to tell. I think that a TV series allows us to do that.
Yeah, no, I think TV does allow for things to really breathe, which is, helpful a lot of the time, because sometimes you'll watch something and think that's great, but I wish there was more time. I wish we knew more. So yeah, a TV series does make sense for sure. I'd also be interested because it's just like, if you're changing the memories, then surely you'd have to change other aspects as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why would you leave a tattoo? You know what I mean? Why would you leave signs of childbirth? Why would you leave? You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things, wouldn't you remove those?
Yeah. So we have to address those. So I think in this version of it, there's different levels of the therapy. And the first level of therapy is just removing very specific memories. So it's not replacing them, it's just removing them. And then I think as people see more and more applications for the technology, they think, oh, now we can actually insert memories, right? So I think that's like a second phase for season 2, right? So
yeah, I think the idea is that like you sort of replace them with memories, but you have to build sort of a backstory still. You can't just remove whole chunks of somebody's memories, so you have to kind of like sometimes create alternate stories that explain their past and explain things, because also we did think about like, okay, what happens if somebody's memories wiped? Like what happens to their relationships? Like do they actually still stay in touch with these family members or not, or whatever? And so that's it's not, you have to think carefully of how to explain it so it still makes sense as well in a way.
Well, like, a memory could be the scaffolding for the way you approach something, right? Because you have an experience of doing some certain thing, that was the impetus for you to, start to care more for someone, right? Start to take a certain responsibility. You know what I mean? Like those kind of things. So removing that could completely change someone's dynamic, right? Like they talk about, brain trauma and how it can completely change someone's personality. You know, like it happened to Roseanne, happened to Sam Kinniston, the comedian, right? So, like, and their personalities completely changed. I think it was like Roseanne got ran over when she was a kid, and I think she had to learn how to read and write again, had to learn how to walk, right? All of these kind of things can be affected. So, removing a memory is, oh, it's also going to be fun, maybe, to see the people who were the firsts and where the tech didn't really. So you've got these like messed up people like in a room or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of these sort of disasters that happen as part of the TV show. Like there's some spectacular failures that we get to see, but as the audience, you're not really sure why it's happening. But it becomes clear it's because, you know, they were still experimenting, right, and they didn't have the procedure down exactly as, you know, with all the safeguards in. So yeah, it opens up a lot of dramatic possibilities.
I mean, I kind of regret going down this path. I want to watch this show now. Like, God damn it. Why are we talking? You should be working on this show.
Yeah, do you have a couple of £1 million laying around somewhere? We'll get started on it.
Hold on. Right.
I'll take 1,000. I don't.
Oh man, I forget who I was talking to, but there's I think what they had done was a proof of concept for something as well, and a lot of the streamers seem to be looking to create localized content. You know what I mean? Like, I know I've heard Netflix, Amazon, and I believe Disney as well talk about this. So, you know what I mean? If you've got a great idea and you've got a proof of concept in the short, like it could be a situation, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're hoping, that, you know, the proof of concept of the short does a great job of setting up the tone in the story and the world. Some things that are hard to convey, like in a script, right, or even a pitch Bible, you can actually see it and feel it and hear it. So we're hoping that's already a positive check in our corner of trying to get people to interested in buying it and developing it.
Yeah, and I guess if you can tag it to similar themic kind of shows that have had success, you know, like Handmaid Tale, I think that's entering its 6th season. And I believe that's always been a top rated show, right? So if you can be like, look, you've done 6 seasons of this, you've had great ratings. Now we're a similar kind of vein as this show, not the same, because we got this different approach. We're doing this kind of thing. So I think we could have the same, if not more success than that show, right? We could do this, and then you take a look at this film and this series and boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? Like, use those kind of examples as well. I think that could, yeah, man. I've got some good vibes with this, man. I think this could be a great thing, man. Oh man, yeah, no. Woo. Okay, so how far away do you think you are, you know, on scripts?
I'm about about a third of the way through the pilot. So I'm hoping by November. Before November, actually, end of October.
Is that a self-imposed deadline?
It is a self-imposed deadline, because I'm going on holiday in early November and be like, I don't want to be thinking about it. I just want to have it like done. Well, the draft, right? It's a draft, so it's kind of it's just something that then Nuri can bounce around and kind of see, you know, how we want to tweak it, where we want to take it. So it's just getting that draft down, and I've worked quite over the several months, just getting the outline, just getting the theme, and just getting those components in place that then makes the writing of it much easier, because I don't have to work those things out as I'm writing it. I've already got, you know, a clear idea of what's motivating these characters, what the world is like, what's their relationship who knows what, all that stuff that you need to sort of know in order to go ahead and just write the pilot.
Yeah.
I think as well with the TV show, you need definitely a lot of prepping, and you need to kind of understand the structure and not just. I mean, I'm sure other people might work differently, but I think generally it is quite wise to kind of have the structure, understand the world that you're building, and then start writing it. And so and in general, it's been a relatively slow process, currently, partly because life gets in the way and stuff. And Heather and I we've been trying to meet up on a sort of weekly basis, but that never happens. And now I'm going traveling for a while, and there's always something that gets in the way. But it's it's still happening. It's just slowly but it's moving along, and so hopefully maybe in the new year we can have put aside more time to kind of like dedicate a little bit more time to it and move it along a little bit. But yeah.
Okay. Well, no, it sounds great. And after seeing what you did with the short, I'm sure this is going to be tremendous. So
thank you.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear more. And when there is more to talk about, please come by and we can have another conversation. That would be very interesting. So would you say that is probably the next thing for both of you, or is there other things in the works?
Go ahead, Nuri. He's got a lot going on.
I suppose that's also partly why it's been a bit difficult, because we're working on our own things together and also separately. I think at the moment I'm trying to, as Heather mentioned, I write as well, but it doesn't come so naturally to me always. So that takes up a lot of my brain space and time in a way. But I'm hoping to sort of in the next year make another short film that is a bit more sort of personal, but it's the age-old question of sort of funding, and it's a bit of a bigger scale. So I've applied to a few film funds here and there, but not had a huge amount of luck. So in the new year, I'll sort of reassess and see where we go from there. And it anyway needs some rewrites and stuff like that, and then just smaller things here and there. But currently kind of taking it a little bit easy when I go traveling. But I'll hopefully have some time to just write and play around and just get some words on paper for various projects.
Okay. And how about you, Heather?
The TV pilot is the main thing, and then I've got a short script it's a sci-fi rom-com that I would like to get made, but again, it's the issue of funding, and it's it would require more of a spaceship, right?
Okay. No,
it's a great script. I've read it, and it's
I watched a film the other day, which was a kind of a rom-com in space on a space ship station. It was like If You Were the Last. I think it came out last year. I watched it on Now TV. It just dropped on that, and it kind of looked like they used cardboard for the sets.
Yeah.
Like there was a show back in the day called like Button Moon. It was a kid show, and it kind of I don't think it went across the pond. So I'm not sure if you saw it, Era, but it was like the spaceship itself. When you saw the spaceship, it was a cardboard spaceship, like floating around space and everything like that. But the quirkiness of like the setting and the set did work.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning, you're like, wait, what the fuck is this? But it does actually work. So you know what I mean? Maybe.
Yeah. I think with comedy you can get away with things which are a bit quirkier, right? Or lo-fi.
Yeah.
So I think if this is going to get made at all, it's going to have to be in that sort of vein.
I'd love to see it get made. It was Heather was kind enough to share the script with me, and I really enjoyed it. And it's such a different vibe, even though it's, I guess, sci-fi-ish. It's so different from A Positive Contribution, but so well written. So I'd love to see it get it made. It's really, really great.
Oh man.
Well, I'd also like to see Nuri's Short Maids, because it was really really touching and emotional and funny. Anyway, so let's get some money, Nuri. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah. Kevin, anything?
Uh, if I
And a
think
few
of
million.
anything, I will definitely let you guys know. Because I think when it comes to features, like you know what I mean, there's studios that I know fund feature. I don't know studios that fund shorts,
Mm.
which is something.
Yeah,
But
it's tough. Short films aren't commercial projects. They almost never make a profit, and so very often it is just people like Heather and myself who are just sort of passionate, and it's, you know, their proof of concepts are more like kind of calling cards. But yeah, I think short film funding is a tough sort of topic in the UK, and I'm sure elsewhere as well. So yeah, you're right. There's not a huge amount of places that just fund short films, because yeah, you can't really make a profit from it.
though that concept does baffle me a little bit, right?
Mm,
Because a short is essentially a TV episode, like in kind of, right? So you could just show it on TV, right? Like
mm,
TVs, like channels are always looking for stuff, right? Instead of rerunning more old episodes of EastEnders or other dross, right? Like run a whole slate of short films, right?
mm,
Because I remember, oh god, good few years back, maybe a decade ago, like BBC Three, I think, used to have like a short season, and they'd run a load of shorts, and whichever got the most kind of buzz, they turn into a series. I think
mm,
there was a show. It got an American spin-off. I think there was a vampire or werewolf. Oh god, I cannot think of what it was called. But yeah, I believe that started off in this whole short season thing. There's
mm,
something else that became quite big that did similar. So it's just like, and Amazon, when Amazon first started their whole streaming aspect, they did a shorts season, because I think there was Mozart in the Jungle and a few others that came from that. So it's just like, if a, Channel 4, BBC, whoever was just like, yo, let's just do a short, like, brought up, because you're always looking for content, and short
mm.
films are content, plus they're introducing audiences to the new generation of filmmakers, right? It just seems like a perfect fit, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how much of an audience there is for short films. I mean, I watch a lot of short films, but because I'm a short filmmaker. But I think in general, like, there's I maybe it's a vicious cycle, because there's not short films shown, people don't watch short films, and because people don't watch short films, it's not shown on TV. So I think there's a few I mean, even, you know,
Mm,
Netflix recently did the ones with Wes Anderson and stuff like that, but obviously he's one of the biggest names in filmmaking in the world, so he, you know, managed to get that funding. But otherwise, yeah, you're right, there's not like, nobody goes on Netflix really to watch short films, or turns on the TV to watch short films, which is a shame, because yeah, they can provide a sort of different form of storytelling that is unique in its own way. So yeah, maybe it
yeah.
needs to change.
Well, yeah, you just change the narrative, right?
Mm.
Like, call it an anthology. Yeah, like, call it
Yeah.
whatever, right? You get someone to introduce it. You know what I mean? Like, was it Terence Stamp had that showed The Hunger back in the day? David
Mm.
Bowie introduced something. I forget what that one was called, but it was just all of these short stories, right? And so you get someone, maybe someone notable, whatever, and be like, today we're going to explore this. We're meeting
Mm.
a number of different filmmakers who have a variety of different stories, all shapes and sizes. So sit back, relax, and let's explore, right? And
Mm.
then you just hit these different shorts, right? Like, because I think if you sell it, people will buy it, right? People will buy into it. People get interested. But if no one's talking about it, how's anyone ever going to get interested in it?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the closest that I think you get to something like that is like black box TV. Is that what it's called? What? No, what am I thinking of? The sci-fi show that's on Netflix. That's an
Black
anthology.
Mirror.
Black Mirror, not Black Box. Yeah,
Yeah.
Black Mirror. That is like very much like, I mean, they're long short films. They wouldn't qualify for
Yeah.
any, but they are essentially like, yeah, you could call it every episode like a big short film that sort of, and it has somewhat of a theme running throughout it. But yeah, again, it's like made by Netflix, made by, you know, very well-known sort of creative. So it's yeah, it's not the same as sort of independent short films being shown.
No, but I mean, it started on Channel 4, right?
That's
Back
right.
in the day. So it started, and no one knew who Charlie Brooker was back then when it first started. So, yeah, I mean, it's all about taking a chance on something, and you know, who knows the success it can be, right? They no longer have Black Mirror. They sold it to Netflix. So, hey, do the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. But you know, I think the short positive contribution definitely is a superb showcase. And man, you're doing this festival circuit, so I'm sure plenty of people are seeing it. And if they know, right, the idea is to you know, develop things into a show, then maybe people like will start making phone calls and be like, yo, you need to give Nuri and Heather a call because they've got this idea. So fingers crossed. Well, guys, this has been a pleasure. I really appreciate you sparing your time, especially you, Nuri, because you're going to be jetting around the world. That sounds nice.
I hope so.
But yeah, no, I'm sure everyone at Sci-Fi London will very much enjoy the film. Yeah, so I hope that's a big success for you guys, and everything that spans out of this just goes from strength to strength. And as I said, when you're ready to talk about your next projects, please definitely stop by.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thanks for your time, and yeah, it's been lovely chatting to you, and I hope everybody at Sci-Fi London enjoys a positive contribution as well.
Awesome. Oh, let people know how they can keep track of everything you guys are doing.
Heather, you go ahead.
Instagram.
Instagram at Heather L McQuaid. Is that right?
I think it's just Heather _McQuaid. But we've also got our a positive contribution on Instagram where we have behind the scenes photos and announcements of our selections and festivals and things.
Yeah, it's just one word, a positive contribution.
Yeah, and my details are just Nuri Moseinco on Instagram or my website or Vimeo or Twitter. all of the above. It's just my name. It's hard to miss.
Awesome. Well, people, all the links will be on the website, so make sure you go follow Nuri, follow Heather, follow the film, and enjoy. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.